coming up on Lawmakers. Governor Perdue unveils his class size reduction plan at the Eggs and Issues breakfast. Lieutenant Governor Taylor continues to advocate for state-provided health insurance for all Georgia children. And veteran journalist Tom Crawford shares his insights on this session. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, Gerald Bryant and Nwandi Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. Also coming up on Lawmakers this evening, Speaker of the House Glenn Richardson says quick action is expected on the Voter ID bill.
And we'll hear from House Minority Leader DuBose Porter, but our lead story tonight, the annual Eggs and Issues breakfast with its all-star cast of elected officials. Well, education was the focus of this morning's Eggs and Issues breakfast. This event, held at the beginning of every legislative session, sponsored by the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, featured the legislative agendas of Governor Sonny Perdue, Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor, House Speaker Glenn Richardson, and Senate President Pro-Tem Eric Johnson. David Zelski, who ate some of those eggs and covered all the issues, joins us live from the Capitol with more. David.
Well, Gerald, revenue is up this year in Georgia, and today's four speakers all agreed improving education is where over two-thirds of Georgia's $17 billion budget should go. Over 2,000 people enjoyed eggs this morning at the Georgia International Convention Center in College Park, and then sat back and listened to a few of the issues expected during this 2006 session.
We've heard a lot of conversation about class size and class size. This year we're going to have a truth in class size bill that just lays it out there, what's what. We've had so many numbers on a page and a matrix, an accountant couldn't keep up with it. But what we're doing is reducing and clarifying the individual maximum class size for grades K through 8. That will take another $163 million in formula funding to cover those costs. Here's what we're doing. In kindergarten, the absolute maximum class size goes from 20 to 18. In 1 through 3 from 23 to 21, and reduces 4 in the 4th and 5th, and in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. That's significant. Teachers will tell you that's better than a raise, is class size reduction. Teacher pay, a 4% pay raise at a minimum for all teachers. You can see an investment of $217 million with the step increase that most of our teachers get. Over 50% of our teachers, that will mean a 7% pay raise for them. And the good thing as well, we are committed to holding our health insurance premiums at a flat rate. You businesses know what that is. No increase in premium for our state employees and our teachers. That's another $138 million for our employees. Our classroom construction, folks, and buses, bonds for buses. Look at that number. $447 million. If we're going to have lower class sizes, we've got to have more classrooms.
The Senate will support the governor's call for more than $1 billion in new spending on education. Unfortunately, for the last 3 years, we faced a recession and declining revenues, and we've had to ask teachers and state employees to help us get through that with little or no pay raises and with increased health insurance benefits. This year, we hope to invest that money back in education and give them our deepest gratitude.
We're going to make it really clear, notwithstanding what activist judges in the U.S. Supreme Court say, that we somehow can allow private property to be taken for private development. We're not going to permit that in Georgia, and we're going to make that clear. We're going to come in and we're going to adopt the most restrictive sexual predator legislation in Georgia, and we're going to make it clear that we're going to protect Georgia's children. I do not intend for there to be a Jessica Lunsford in Georgia like there was in Florida. And we're going to monitor those people, and we're going to be tough on them in Georgia. We're going to come in and we're going to get the job done. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do. I don't run from it. I support Governor Sonny Perdue and his agenda, and I'll do everything in my power to support him in trying to lead this state as the CEO of this state. And you tell me the last time a Speaker of the House stood before you and told you that he was publicly going to support the governor of this state, and we're going to move forward and lead this state in the fashion that's been led the last 4 years. But that's what we're going to do.
Over the past few years, the Hope Scholarship, over my objections, has been cut. I believe those cuts were not necessary. I believe that the cuts were made too often. Today, students and families are reaching into their pockets to buy things that hope used to pay for. The greatest college scholarship program in the nation deserves better than that. I support Governor Perdue's call for a Hope Chest amendment. We do need to focus our Hope proceeds on the scholarship and the pre-kindergarten program. But I want us to look at the fine print of that proposal and make sure that that amendment does not allow the Hope Scholarship to be cut again.
Now, later on in our program, Lieutenant Governor Taylor explains his new health care proposal for children. We'll also hear more about Speaker Richardson, Senator Johnson, and Governor Perdue's plans for the 06 session. Reporting live, I'm David Zulski for Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, David.
Well, also at this morning's event, Governor Perdue announced the Graduate Georgia, a plan that would lower the state's high school dropout rate. The governor said this year's budget will include $21 million to provide a high school completion counselor to every state high school.
One of the ways that we're addressing it was with at least one dropout prevention counselor or completion counselor looking to the positive in every high school in Georgia. They're going to be working with at-risk students who are just on the edge of not knowing whether they want to complete their high school career or not, working with them individually, demonstrating to them what the economic advantages of finishing their education are, as well as the ability to provide for their families. So in working with these students with the sole purpose of keeping them in school, helping them to find a career goal and a career track, we think is going to serve Georgia for many years.
Currently, almost 40% of Georgia students drop out of high school without earning their diplomas. The State Department of Education, the Department of Technical and Adult Education, and the Commission for New Georgia are supporting the plan by creating career interest ladders to direct students towards the state's strategic industries. The money allocated to Graduate Georgia could be a boost to school districts if the General Assembly adopts the governor's proposal requiring local systems to spend 65% of their budgets on classroom education. That measure would exclude guidance counselors from the local funding formula. Now, Democratic leaders say the governor's education initiatives do not go far enough. Coming up later in our broadcast, we have a response from House Minority Leader DuBose Porter.
Also at this morning's Eggs and Issues breakfast, Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor applauded efforts by senators from both parties in limiting the sales of graphic video games to minors. They might have content of sexual nature or violence. This following story contains some of those images, and you should use some discretion in viewing them. Jesse Freeman is live at the Capitol. He reports on that proposed legislation. Jesse.
Well, Gerald, last year the Senate passed a bill requiring video game vendors to display their industry's rating system at their place of business. A companion bill with many of the same sponsors would restrict those vendors from selling explicit video games to minors. Here's a report on the bill, which includes some of those images. After congressional hearings last year, more and more people are becoming aware of the explicit and graphic images of some video games. These are some of the gentler images from mature-rated games. Some state senators want to make the sale of these games to minors illegal.
We must do more to protect our children from the constant cultural assault that undermines our values and undermines our families.
Senate Bill 105 specifically deals with restricting the sale of explicitly violent and explicitly sexual content in video games to minors.
The issue is one of government control and how much should be legislated. Some leaders think special attention should be taken when it comes to media available to young people.
The marketing leads us to believe that it may be something maybe okay or potentially okay for our younger children, when in fact the true content of the video game or the true content of the material, the video, is something that the majority of us, maybe the bulk of us, most of us would say, this is repugnant.
Senate Bill 105 now awaits action in the Science and Technology Committee.
My colleagues on the other side, Senator Bill Hamrick and Senator Chip Rogers and Senator Judson Hill, obviously are working with me to hopefully get this bill through out of committee.
Now, Senators Hill and Stoner, both sponsors of Senate Bill 105, agreed that the difficulty in working through the bill will be in defining exactly what constitutes a graphic image. Reporting live, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Thanks, Jesse. We'll be watching this story closely.
The House Governmental Affairs Committee gave a due pass yesterday to legislation that requires certain types of photo ID in order to vote. There's been a lot of opposition concerning voters' rights ever since Senate Bill 84 surfaced last year, an issue House Speaker Glenn Richardson spoke on this morning at the Eggs and Issues breakfast.
When we passed that 100-and-something page bill, there were already 17 forms of identification required to vote, and we simply thought it made common sense to tell you if you wanted to vote, you had to have a photo identification only. We had written in that bill that the old system was pretty simple. It said you could have a utility bill to prove you were, who said you were, to vote for the president of the free world. You could have a court order that you had had a sex change as identification under the old law, the law that was in place. And we said, this is silly. If you go rent a movie at Blockbuster, you have a photo ID. If you want to go adopt a pet, you have to have photo ID. If you want to get on an airplane, photo ID. If you want to cash a check, photo ID. Surely, if you're going to vote, you'd pull out a photo identification. Yet, there are some who protest. And here's what I say to them. Why? What is it you're afraid of showing a photo identification? And so we're going to make it clear this year. We announced yesterday that even though a federal judge faulted what we had done and said that it was a poll tax, we said, okay, well, if it costs money and that makes it a poll tax, I'll tell you what we'll do. We're going to make it clear. Anybody in the state of Georgia, for free, can get a photo identification, and we're going to put it in all 159 counties of this state, and no longer can you complain that you can't afford to get a photo identification, because it's going to be there for you to go get if you want to vote. And already, they're saying, oh, no, we can't do that. Oh, no, we can't do that. You know what? You can do it, and you will do it. And we're going to move forward on that proposal.
Now, the voter ID bill, Senate Bill 84, is currently in the House Rules Committee. House Democrats, on the other hand, oppose the voter ID measure and the fast track that they say it's on in the General Assembly. House Minority Leader DuBose Porter says Republicans are creating fear about a problem that does not exist.
We have not had a case of voter fraud since 1996, when we implemented the 17 methods that you show as identification at the polls. So the message on, they make it sound like there is no identification. We have identification now in Georgia. What they're saying is you've got to have the picture ID, and we're going to, so what you've got is they've created this problem. We're throwing a lot of money at it, and it's not an issue in Georgia.
The House Minority Leader also said that the governor's education proposals are not impressive. According to Representative Porter, most of the measures have been championed by Democrats for years. He characterized the announcements made at today's Eggs and Issues breakfast as too little, too late.
For too long, we've sat back and let Republicans try to define who Democrats are, and they've painted us out as something like from New England or some other place. Georgia Democrats have always been for education and classroom teachers. We've been for health care. We've been for open government. We've been for economic development and creating jobs in Georgia. So our agenda is reframing that. Who are we and what are we about? So our aggressive agenda is about education. If you want to start there, we're for teacher pay raises. We suggested that the last several years. Last year, when we had finally some money to put into the budget, our priority was to restore the $1 billion of cuts to the FTE formula to local schools. And this governor and this Republican leadership did not do it. What does that mean? That means that nearly 100 school systems had to raise local property taxes. Now, what was interesting this morning is the governor showed the money, and he showed the spread of $1 billion of the cuts. He's now calling that efficiency in government. But what in fact that is that's what local citizens have had to pay in increased property taxes to take care of the cuts, because they would not restore the cuts to education. So to come this year and to attempt to champion that, I think is really really kind of fun to see, because I don't think educators and those who support our public schools will fall for this trap a fourth year of a four-year session when he has not made education a priority on any time prior to this, and suddenly before election time make this the priority. Maybe he's running scared.
One of Capitol Hill's most experienced journalists is a regular contributor to Lawmakers. Let's check in with Tom Crawford, the national editor of CapitolImpact.com. Let's start out with eggs and issues. That's always a time when politicians, state leaders can unveil what they want to do or kind of glorify what they've done in the past session. We've already heard the governor and seen the governor talk about some of his educational initiatives. The news out of eggs and issues today.
Well, the biggest news was that the governor is going to get behind efforts to reduce the size of classrooms, which is a requirement of the Education Reform Act. Now, the first 3 years of his administration, Governor Perdue had the legislature adopt bills that allowed them to delay the class size reductions, and I know the governor and some of his aides have been skeptical in the past as to whether class size reductions really work or whether they help education performance, but he's had what some of his critics are calling an election year conversion and is going to get behind it this year. He's going to put some bond money into the budget to build more classrooms so that they can lower the number of pupils in the classrooms, and certainly that's something I know teachers will appreciate.
And he had been roundly criticized by the Democrats during the last 3 years for not pursuing that mandate of smaller class size.
That is correct. That was always an area of vulnerability for him, I think, because he had resisted it, but for whatever reason, he's on board now.
The other newsy item out of today's event, how much is the raise going to be for teachers? Last week he said there's going to be a raise. I won't tell you how much yet. Today he did.
Well, he gave us a range of 0 to 25% last week. Today he said it at 4%, which, you know, not as much as 6% that they've got in the past, but certainly better than what they've got in the last 3 years. And again, it's important to remember he's also going to hold the line on any premium increases in health insurance coverage for teachers. So that's a big thing for them as well. It means that that pay raise they do get will not be wiped out by having to pay more for health insurance.
And the governor kind of put the lieutenant governor in the position of having to say, good job, like your ideas, etc., and be pretty gracious during the presentation. Let's talk a minute about the lieutenant governor's major proposals so far this session. Yesterday he unveiled a plan that would provide basically health insurance for all children in Georgia from 0 to 18 years of age.
Right. It would basically be aimed at children whose families make too much money to either get Medicaid or Peach Care health insurance coverage. He estimates that there are maybe 100,000 kids who would fall in that category who don't have health care coverage right now. Depending on how many kids would sign up for it, depending on how big the co-pays are, the estimate is it would cost $50 to $100 million a year. The important thing is, according to Taylor, it would finally ensure that all of the kids in Georgia do have some form of health care coverage.
Any realistic chance of that passing?
Oh, of course not. The General Assembly is controlled by the Republican majority. They have already been shooting holes in the Taylor plan, and he's well aware of that. He's a political realist. I think the important thing it does, it gives him a good talking point to use in the Democratic primary where he will be running against Secretary of State Kathy Cox.
Other things that might get passage, and fairly quickly, Voter I.D., the photo I.D. mandated last year, questioned by the courts. Speaker Glenn Richardson today said some pretty quick action we could expect on that.
Looks like we'll have a vote on that maybe Thursday or Friday of this week, and they have addressed two of the major issues there, which is making the ID card free and also providing more locations where you can get it. The law is still being criticized, and there will probably still be some legal challenges to it.
What about eminent domain? We've already seen a hearing on that. Might we expect fast action, and might Democrats go along with a reasonable eminent domain bill?
The Democrats, I think, will certainly go along with it. It might take a few days longer to get that up for a floor vote because there are so many proposals out there. And I know the House Judiciary Committee, they're trying to sift through, 18 or 20 different bills and try to figure out the best approach to take. So it may take a little while, but they'll get there.
Quickly, Tom, any other issues that might be simmering that we don't know about yet?
There may be some action on the redistricting front. We've already seen an attempt to redraw some Senate districts in northeast Georgia, and the allegations are being heard that that's an attempt to force a Democrat out of one of the races. So that could cause some interesting comment as we go down the road here.
All right, Tom, we look forward, as I said, to many interesting conversations with you throughout the session. Tom Crawford, national editor of CapitolImpact.com. Thanks for joining us on Lawmakers.
Thanks, Gerald.
Well, for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org for more information. Click on Watch Online, then follow the instructions for watching live or looking at past Lawmakers programs in our archives. That website address again is gpb.org. Just another way we keep you apprised of what's going on at the General Assembly.
Governor Perdue wants to move the Georgia Department of Corrections headquarters from Atlanta to Forsyth, Georgia. The governor's FY07 budget includes $7.5 million to pay for that move, which is expected to result in savings of over $4 million a year. The move to the existing facilities of the Tift College campus are scheduled to begin in 2008.
Governor Perdue has always said he likes a business-like approach when it comes to running our state. During this morning's Eggs and Issues breakfast, he explained how Georgia fares compared with other states when it comes to funding health care and education.
In the best managed category, you've heard me say time and time again that being the best managed state in this nation is my goal. And I think these are some numbers that indicate we're on that path. When you look at the percentage of Medicaid spending as a percent of your budget in the United States, Georgia is 39th. That's a pretty efficient spending there. When you look at K through 12 spending, folks, look at this number. The percentage of expenditure of budget on kindergarten to the 12th grade, Georgia ranks 6th in the percentage in the United States. Those are significant numbers. Those show where our priorities are. The good news is we got more money to spend here as a state grows. With a $17 billion business at 6%, you're going to have $1.25 billion more to spend this year and to invest back in Georgia as we go forward. $1.25 billion. Where does that go to? Watch the pie chart here. Once again, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Over $1 billion of the new revenue is going to education. 72% of that new money is going to education.
Education is also Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor's top priority. This session, however, this morning he shared his new plan for children's health insurance, which he calls Peach Kids.
Now it's time to provide health insurance to every child in Georgia, all of them, regardless of who they are, who their parents are, where they live, or their income. I made this proposal yesterday, and my staff is here today with copies of it. I assure you that it's practical and that it's affordable. The idea comes from a program in place in Illinois. We will adopt it to our needs here in Georgia and make it our own. I propose that we call it Peach Kids. Come to Georgia, where every child with a B average can go to college tuition free, every single one. Where every high school graduate can attend the technical college of their choice for free, every single one. Where every 4-year-old can attend a one-of-a-kind pre-kindergarten for free, every single one. And now come to Georgia, where every child has access to affordable health care insurance.
Senate President Pro-Tem Eric Johnson says he will support Governor Perdue's plans for education, but during this morning's Eggs and Issues breakfast, he also mentioned a few technology initiatives he believes will be good for business in Georgia.
Our second priority is to invest in the infrastructure and technology necessary to grow Georgia's economy. And think about this. In the last 15 years, since China, India, and the former Soviet Union have joined the world economy, the labor force has doubled. It is no wonder that we are going through major changes and flexibilities to meet that world economy. And it's only been because of the flexibility of the private enterprise system, President Bush's tax cuts, and the fiscal stewardship of Governor Perdue that Georgia is enjoying that recovery.
Well, not only did Senate President Pro-Tem Eric Johnson eat some eggs and discuss issues, he also found time to crack some jokes. Here's a sample of what you missed if you didn't attend. Drum roll, please.
Welcome to the 2006 General Assembly. It's been called show business for ugly people. I grew up in Louisiana. Georgia is boring compared to Louisiana. You remember a winning campaign slogan in that state was vote for the crook, it's important. Former Governor Edwards, in running against KKK member David Dukes, said he may be a grand wizard with a sheet, but I'm a wizard under the sheets. We won't be nearly as entertaining.
On to other matters. Members of several police agencies, including the Waycross Police and the State Patrol, were honored in the Senate today. Last June, they pursued and caught a semi-driver who was suspected of armed robbery. The 100-mile-an-hour chase started in Waycross and ended in Tifton.
Talking with them that this vehicle would not make it to I-75. It would be stopped at all costs because they believed that the situation was so dire that if he made it to I-75, there would be loss of life. But I'm proud to say there was none. There were no injuries. The professionalism that they have shown is tremendous, and that's why I asked them to come here today so that we as a Senate body could thank them, could express to them our appreciation for the work that they do, not in just this case, but in every instance.
Senator Carter said the legislature needs to address a problem highlighted during this chase. Many police departments across the state don't have compatible radio equipment that allows them to communicate during emergencies.
Well, legislators got a close-up look at Georgia wildlife today, and it had nothing to do with what was going on the House or Senate floor. It actually was Sportsman Day at the Capitol, and lobbyists discussed conservation and this year's Right to Hunt amendment over plates of barbecue. J.R. Charles has more on this day of conservation and celebration and snakes.
Thank you. Governor Perdue may have accepted the awards, but the animals stole the show. The 4th annual Sportsman Day let legislators get reacquainted with Mother Nature, up close and personal. Many representatives never have a chance to go out into the wild. That's why they're having Georgia Sportsman Day here. It gives them a chance to walk on the wild side. Scott Tanner organized the event, and he couldn't be happier with the participation.
The things you do to stay in the game. You'll do anything to get a vote, won't you?
Snakes, owls, skunks. Nearly every species was represented. That makes folks like Pete Griffin excited.
Since the legislature and representatives, they don't get to go outside much, we're bringing the outside into them.
Sometimes a snake in the hand is worth 2 bills in the books. I'm J.R. Charles for Lawmakers.
Thanks, J.R. Coming up tomorrow, be sure to join us online for a webcast of Governor Sonny Perdue's 4th State of the State address at 3 p.m. That webcast can be accessed through our website at www.gpb.org. Then be sure to join us for a special hour-long edition of Lawmakers at 7 p.m. We'll broadcast the State of the State in its entirety during that program. That's tomorrow night at 7. If you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. Now stay tuned for Wild Chronicles. That's coming up next here on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for the 2nd legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Nwandi Lawson.
And I'm Gerald Bryant. For all of us at Lawmakers, thanks for watching.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.